It's good to be here this morning. And I just want to dwell on that for just a moment before we get the lesson started. It's good this morning. After pouring out his troubles and talking about traveling through the valley of the shadow of death, David says, as part of the comfort that he looks forward to, I will dwell in the house of Yahweh forever. This really is the place of comfort. So this morning, as we begin, we're going to look a little bit, as you may have seen a moment ago, at anger. And everyone's favorite subject. Who here is proud of the times when they've been angry? Right? But sometimes we do kind of meter this with saying, but we have that verse that says, "Be angry and sin not." Right? So it's just that we don't want to sin when we're angry. We don't want to let that prompt us to treat others in a way that we shouldn't. Right? And so that's good, and that's a good start. That's a good foundation. Today I want to get into it. It's going to surprise you really deeply. I want to start by looking at the origin of anger. Where does anger come from? Why is it part of our human makeup? And as we do so often, we're going to look toward God. In Nahum, we have these words: "The Lord is a jealous and avenging, a wrathful God. Who can stand before his indignation? Who can endure the heat of his anger? His wrath is poured out like fire, and the rocks are broken into pieces by him." And then the next words: "The Lord is good, a stronghold in the day of trouble. He knows those who take refuge in him." What a contrast. Do those sound to our modern ear like opposites within the same text? If they do sound opposite to you, we need to understand what God created anger to be better than we do now. And he goes on in the same vein as before. "But with an overflowing flood, he will make a complete end of the adversaries and will pursue his enemies in darkness." I want to challenge our perception of anger. Does anger sometimes lead people, even ourselves, to do things we should not? Yes. Yes, it does. We don't want to let go of that. However, what is this godly anger? What is this righteous anger? What does that even really mean? And I don't think we really know. All right. We see God has a purpose with his anger in this passage. What is it? What is God using his anger for? He's punishing the evildoers, right? He's correcting the wrong. He's righting the wrong. And I want to propose that as the purpose, the godly purpose of anger. God's purpose for the anger that he has and that he has given to us because we are made in his image. His wrath is poured out like fire. Why? Well, it's not just against his adversaries. They're adversaries because they have done wrong. And who is it that, sits unafraid? Who is it that watches this angry display and is comforted? That's my God. He can defend me no matter what. It's the people who are on his side, who are doing good and right. They sit back, much like the people in a courtroom who see the evildoer who has taken the life of their loved one sentenced. They watch that in safety, in comfort, knowing that justice is being carried out. God's anger is not out of control. It's used for a specific purpose. We have so many of these verses. God is a righteous judge and a God who feels indignation every day. Obviously inferred against evil. Exodus 20. God is a jealous God, visiting the iniquity, and it goes on there to talk about against those who do evil, third and fourth generations, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. This doesn't change in the New Testament. In Romans 1:18, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men. Next chapter, but because of your hard and impenitent heart, you are storing up wrath for yourself on the day of wrath when God's righteous judgment will be revealed. Wrath, judgment, linked together. But what happens is we distort anger. Isn't that kind of what all sin is? We take something that God gave us and then we misuse it, change it, twist it. Or perhaps it's Satan who shows us how to do those things. Regardless, in Proverbs 29:22, it's obvious that people misuse anger. A man of wrath stirs up strife. One given to anger causes much transgression. And before that, in chapter 25, a man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. Anger can be used for good, but we must have self-control with it and use it as God intended. And so James 1 says, know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. We should have anger that produces the righteousness of God. That's the contrast. We're misusing the anger. It's anger of man because we're not using it for God's purposes. If we use our anger like God uses his, we will bring resolution to conflict and we will bring justice to injustice. A man of quick temper acts foolishly. We don't want to act foolishly. A fool gives vent to his spirit, full vent to his spirit, right? And there's the element there of without thinking, without due consideration. What's the answer to distorted anger? I believe one place we could find the answer is in Ephesians 5. Be very careful, okay? Anger is a powerful emotion. We need to be careful with it, much as we would with a fire. And it's interesting how often fire-type words are used to describe anger. Be careful how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. So we want to use our anger wisely, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Our anger is an opportunity. Yes, I know Ephesians 5 here in this passage is not directly speaking about anger. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying we can apply it to anger and understand how to use our anger. Verse 17, therefore do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. What is God's will with anger? I want to know that. As a Christian, I want to be one with his heart, with his soul, with his mind, and I want to use my anger like he wants me to. In verse 18, after telling us to understand what the Lord's will is, he says, do not get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit. Don't be overflowing with wine. Be overflowing with the Spirit of the Most High Creator, in whose image we are made. When do we feel anger? And this is kind of still along the idea of some of this is distorted, some of it is not distorted. Do we look out in our society and see injustice? Do we see wrong things, have people mistreated, people not treated correctly? Yes, probably we all do. We can see that not only in the reading that we listened to just a moment ago from Amos, blanking out here, from Amos, but also in our own society. Sometimes the injustices are individual. I see a particular person mistreated. I hear of crimes perpetrated on individuals and people are hurt. And that makes me angry. Sometimes our anger is at personal affronts. I'm treated in a way that I don't like. Sometimes I'm upset at inconveniences. And this makes me think we don't always use the word anger for anger. Right? Here are some other words that we use. I was upset. Well, that really irritated me. I wasn't angry, but it just really got under my skin. Regardless of the level of the emotion, a lot of these words are still used to describe something we felt because of an injustice. And it's the same emotion, just different intensity levels. It doesn't help us handle the emotion when we distinguish based on the intensity level. It helps us handle the emotion when we know where it comes from, what God wants us to use it for, and the purpose that it should achieve in the end. Sometimes I'm angry when I feel that I've fallen short, or when I am disappointed by someone else. I expected something from someone else, and I feel abandoned, and I feel totally let down by this person. But maybe it's worse when I feel let down by myself, right? I expected myself to play at a certain level in a game, and I didn't, and I lost, and I get angry. More at myself maybe than the other people. I expected myself to follow God's laws, and now I find myself falling for this temptation again. I'm upset at myself. And just at unmet expectations in general. All of these things can make us feel this emotion of anger. We want to ask, is our anger mimicking God's anger? Is my heart and soul the same as His during my anger? Am I getting angry for the same reasons? Am I doing the same thing with my anger that He does? Am I mimicking God? He is, after all, our Father. And if we're going to be His children, we want to imitate Him. I'm going to key in on some ways to mimic God with our anger, and in the middle of this process that we're going to outline here. So we're going to look at 3 steps. We want to admit our anger, analyze our anger, and aim our anger appropriately. I can't steer or govern or fix something that I'm in denial of. So if I just say, well, I'm really upset right now, but I'm not angry, I really can't address that emotion or help it go the right direction. We need to be aware of it and acknowledge it to ourselves. Okay, you know what? I'm feeling this, and it's so cool being a human, isn't it? It's really interesting because we have these emotions and these feelings and experiences, and we just kind of ride the wave without really being aware that we're on that particular wave. And so then it's hard to know how to ride that wave. We have to take the time and say, you know what? I'm angry. This is anger that I'm experiencing. Just the fact of slowing down to admit, I am angry in this moment. That is the first step to doing something about it and doing something with it. We need to restrain our immediate response. We read through Proverbs and we saw that that person that's hasty and gives full vent to his emotions and all of that bad stuff happens when you do that. Remember Jesus when he drove out the money changers? Do you know that in the other account of that, it says that he went in and into the temple in the evening and he saw the money changers? He saw all of that. And then he went out to the Mount of Olives without doing a thing about it that evening. In the morning, he had a plan. That's when he took the action that was appropriate. Restrain your immediate response. Allow the initial heat to cool. Breathe a little bit. Ephesians, read the board, don't listen to me. Ephesians chapter 4, and verse 26 says, in your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. And do not give the devil a foothold. Wow. So here in Ephesians, the apostle is telling us, here's a secret. Your anger opens a door for Satan to cause you to misconstrue that anger and hurt people. The anger comes from, I want to say this correctly. The anger comes from a type of motivation that is good, right? Righting injustices is good. Correcting those things that are wrong can be good. But yelling at the person who just mistreated me may not correct the injustice. It may make it worse, right? So don't give the devil a foothold. Do not sin when you're angry. And it finally says, do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. Let that emotion go. Breathe a little bit. Restrain your immediate response. All right, Ephesians 4, 26 and 27. Next, we want to look at analyzing our anger. It's really only after we let the heat simmer down that we can analyze, is this valid or invalid anger? And I really can't analyze that before I know why I'm angry. But let's talk about valid and invalid anger. Valid anger, very simple. These are the same reasons God gets angry. Invalid, those are the things that I'm offended. These are not things that God would get angry about. Well, how can I know the difference? Well, I think it's pretty simple. Like Matthew 18 mentions, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him your fault between you and him alone. Matthew 18:15. And of course, we have the rest of that passage. The test that's used in that passage is it sin? Is it sin? If he sins, go and tell him his fault. If it is sin, and I'm angry at this injustice, that is a valid anger. That's what God gets angry at. Isn't that right? If it's not a sin, then I need to be very careful. I'm probably dealing with something that I'm upset about, something that is personal for me, and that's not really a sin. There are ways to handle that, and there are things you should do about that, but this is the first thing. We need to know, is this a sin we're correcting, or do we just have the same response as if it were sin? And now we're misconstruing the situation and misusing our anger. So to know if it is sin or not, we're going to really have to figure out, why are we angry? Being a human is really interesting, because I can't think of a single time when I have felt that flash of anger come over me, wash over me. And if you had asked me at that moment, why are you angry? I wouldn't have been able to tell you. I can't think of a single time I would have been able to tell you. The feeling is so strong that all I'm doing is feeling the feeling. I don't know why I'm feeling it. Now, there was a thing that prompted that response, no doubt, always, right? But once I do the first thing that we talked about in the last slide, once I admit my anger, slow down, calm down a bit, now I can come and figure out the real reason I'm angry. It's an analysis that really has to be done with a cool head. I can't accurately come up with this reason when I'm influenced by this strong emotion. Figure out the real reason I'm angry. Then I can decide, is it valid? Is it invalid? And I also need to ask myself, how serious is the offense? Somebody didn't communicate with me when it would have been really helpful for me to know. Maybe somebody didn't tell me, hey, we already got groceries, and I went to town and I got groceries. And I'm kind of upset, angry, because I could have saved myself a whole grocery trip if you just communicated with me. Okay, how serious is that really? Well, chances are, with modern refrigeration, I'm going to put that somewhere and keep it cool, and I'm still going to have that next week, and we'll have more groceries. It'll be fine. Really, it's an inconvenience, and it's not a sin. So let me see here. Sure, we'll keep going. So now we want to talk about anger, aiming our anger. What do we do with it? What's the correct thing to do with our anger? Well, if we understand that the goal of anger is to correct sin, it is to right injustices, then our question is going to be, as we are trying to be wise with our anger, which was pointed to in the Proverbs, what's our goal? What is our end goal? What do we want to accomplish in the end? Well, if it's something like it wasn't a sin, I had to get groceries a second time, then really I'm not trying to get this person to admit that they did wrong and come back and be in a right standing with God. I'm really just trying to ask them, could you communicate with me next time? It would make my life easier. I'm negotiating understanding. That's my goal. If it is something that was sin, I do want them to become right with God. And is them doing what I want them to the most important thing in that situation? Is my wrath being appeased the most important thing? Or really is the end goal that they've treated me in a certain way that is wrong in God's law, and I want them to be right with God? That's really the most important end goal, isn't it? If I am using my anger to help people be right with God, I'm using it correctly. Some people have a problem with being too angry too much, too often. And I think that's the main focus. We need to cool our anger. We need to abstain from being angry. We need to not be angry as much, right? We need to be angry, but don't allow it to cause you to sin. I have another problem. Personally, a problem I struggle with is I see an injustice, but it wasn't done to me, and I shrug, I turn and walk away because this is not my problem. And I may feel the injustice, I may feel the anger, but I do nothing. That's not right either. Anger is there for a purpose. It's there to wake us up to do something about the injustices in our lives. So we have to figure out what to do about this situation. Do I lovingly confront the person, as in Matthew, or do I release it to God and let it go? I want to talk about the second option for a moment. The second option is not simple. The second option is not just forgive them and let it go and walk away. That's not the second option. When I say release it, what I mean is Recognize God as the one lawgiver, the one eternal judge who will punish all wrongs, and let him do his job, and don't try to do it for him. Somebody swerves in front of me, causes an unsafe situation, also hurts my pride because they cut me off, they're too close to me in traffic. I'm angry. I'm angry about that. That hurts my feelings. And it has to be a righteous anger because they're endangering me and the people in my car. But is it going to help the situation for me to do any of the things that come natural right there in that moment? Tailgating them, laying on my horn, screaming at them from my car. None of those things are going to accomplish greater safety, for one thing, but they're not going to accomplish that person becoming a better driver or becoming closer to God. All of those things exacerbate the situation. They make it worse. When I give that situation to God, I'm acknowledging God knows their hearts, why they did that. God knows the sins they are committing in that moment really better than I do, because it has a lot to do with what's inside of their soul at that moment. And I know that He will make it right on the judgment day. So I'm giving that to Him. I'm letting go of it because it simply is not my end of the stick to whittle on. This is God's role. So that's a lot more powerful because you know justice will be accomplished. That's why I can let go of it when I give it to God. There's so much more to this. We had a number of classes and a special study on anger. I don't even remember now. Was it earlier this year, last year, maybe before that, anyway. And I would love to go through that again. There's no way I can have a sermon and cover all of the things we need to cover. So that's my caveat. But as we look at some takeaways, these are going to be key today, and they're going to be key to the lesson that I plan to do next, which is interacting with an angry person. We had a shipping container delivered to our property, and the driver got stuck turning into the road. There was a fence post. He turned in, and experienced driver, but somehow he still kind of got the container pushed up against this fence post, and then his wheels were off the road on the other side, and there was a slope, and he couldn't back out, and he tried a lot of things. It didn't work, and so finally we sawed off the fence post, and he was able to get through the corner. And as we're leaving, the fence post, my neighbor's, is laying on the ground. The other neighbor comes out from across the other road and looks at the ruts and looks at the dented culvert. And maybe most of all, he was angry on behalf of the neighbor whose fence post I had cut down. And he was upset. I say all that to say that that really prompted this, because this is a normal, everyday, hopefully not every day, a normal occurrence that happens frequently in our lives. And we need to know really about our own anger before we step out and try to interact and know how to handle the anger of someone else. So here are our key takeaways. It's not inherently bad. It's God's reminder to bring wrongs to justice. We want to dig deep to figure out what this injustice is that we're feeling. And to do that, we need to admit our anger, analyze our anger, and aim our anger appropriately. But I want to emphasize, dig deep to figure out why you are feeling what you're feeling. If you don't do that work, you will be a victim of this emotion rather than its master. And finally, we want to use wisdom to determine the best path to accomplishing God's goal of building up, leading people to righteousness when we're angry. We want to use our anger like God does. We want to be one heart and one soul with God when it comes to anger. If you're here this morning and it's intriguing to you that as Christians we can know the deepest secrets about how we're made and formed, about our emotions, about life, about how to live life well as we imitate Jesus and God and become one heart and one soul with Him. We'd love to help you get closer to Him. If you have any need, please come as we stand and sing.